Hello, I'm Halo, and I'm here with my friend Seek. We're going to be going over an update to our build guide for Duo Start, and we're going to be going over some of the changes we made to the build, pretty small things, as well as our Atlas passive tree, our strategy that we're going to be doing going into maps, how we plan on making our currency, as well as going over the better trading folders and a few other things that might be relevant if you plan on playing the same builds this league. So first, I'll start with changes to the Saboteur. I ended up deciding to go with set and forget because the 25% reduced trap duration that decreases the amount of time before your trap detonates when you throw it. It's not a DPS loss. In the last video I said that you can use chain reaction since your traps trigger when your nearby traps explode. Using this node on Saboteur, you can just throw your seismic traps and then throw a bunch of exsanguinates around, and then as soon as any of them trigger, they all do. And that's true, and it works, but it's clunky and annoying, and I don't like it, so I'm doing this instead. Because we're taking set and forget twice, it means you just throw your traps down and then like a second or two they explode even if they don't get triggered by an enemy walking on them, which means we can drop this node. Made some small changes to the tree, just little optimizations and stuff, as well as updating all the gem links and all of the PoBs. For the final version, running these, you kind of had to drop something, and so I've opted to drop the skill duration nodes. I don't think they will be necessary because in the calculations here, you can see seismic trap. It has a 5.47, like a 5.5 second cooldown or duration when you throw it. So even without duration nodes, since we anoint a duration node and you get some duration from one of your support gems, are things really going to be living through 5.5 seconds if you seismic traps exploding on them? At this point in the build, probably not. So I'm electing to drop the duration nodes. If you like them, or if you don't quite have enough damage, you can drop something like this damage wheel here, or there's lots of other things in the tree you can drop, or a single cluster jewel to keep the duration nodes if you like them. We still take them early on because they are more valuable as you level up, and we just drop these to put points in the cluster. So it's a little bit of respecking, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah,
We've done.
additionally
Oh, go ahead.
to things dying very quickly, there's also the fact that many of the bosses in the field have teleports. As you move around the arena, the bosses are going to be teleporting onto the characters, and they likely aren't going to be spending the full, like, over 7 second duration in the traps that you would have if you did take the skill effect duration.
Yeah, it's true. We were having a hard time keeping the DPS up on the bosses, but we found that when we timed it right, they just died in the first few seconds of seismic traps exploding. So we'll toy around with this. You can obviously change it to however you desire. We've also made some changes to the budget Aurabot. One of the main things is we properly organized everything by link. We had Flame Dash in the body armor because it was like, you have enough life free to cast it, but we just forgot that you don't have any life recovery. So I've just made some swaps to put Precision in, D-level Clarity, and then link Soul Link with Inspiration support, and that drops your Soul Link mana cost down to 33.64 a second, while having enough mana regen that you can sort of recover. If your mana cost is too high still, you can down level Soul Link a little bit, but I think this should be fine. So you have anything you want to add about the budget Aurabot changes?
No, that's pretty much it. The Aurabot was not changed very much aside from the gem links.
We might have made a couple small changes to the rares just to be a little bit more efficient. Most of the changes are on the more expensive version. We did testing with coruscating elixir uptime. In a 60% reduced flash charges gained maps with this budget setup, and that is only using the Flask Mastery, the Pathfinder node, and Survival Instincts. With only those three things, you can maintain 100% uptime on coruscating elixir, standing still without killing anything. So, not too worried about that. For the expensive Saboteur, there's a lot of things that you can do. Nebulouses are always going to be amazing because you get high elemental resist, so they're just the best damage weapon in the game if you're converting lightning to cold. I've opted to go with Crystallized Omniscience because it's kind of broken. If you don't want to do Crystallized Omniscience, you can do Ashes of the Stars. It's not as little damage as you'd think because Ashes of the Stars gives you a reservation, meaning you can drop the Charisma wheel and save five passive points. So you would just, and then you would swap in Cold Penetration to your main link, and then you just pick up damage elsewhere in the passive tree, like maybe picking up the crit multi-nodes, get another medium cluster jewel, or there's lots of ways you can scale damage. Either should be fine. I think Omni will be slightly better, though. And then obviously we convert with Call of the Brotherhoods. One thing we're going to mess around with is reduce the quality in Call of the Brotherhoods, so we're not converting, because with 20% quality, you're converting 96% of your damage, and we want to be applying sap, so we might lower the quality testing to, so we can still be applying sap to bosses, because we want to be doing some lightning damage to them to apply a sap from Secrets of Suffering, since it's just good value. So it's pretty straightforward. And then for the expensive Aurabot, Seek, take it away. What have we done here?
So energy from within turns out bad jewel. What we're doing here is sacrificing the points that we put into the melding wheel to go over to the right and recover Ghost Shroud, or Ghost Dance rather. It is insanely good recovery. And then the mastery on the wheel right below it, by Ghost Dance,
Oh yeah,
is
this one.
a very good mastery. So those 3 points right there into that notable and that wheel almost entirely make up for the difference lost from not taking melding wheel. And you still have 1 jewel socket there. Just because you didn't take melding doesn't mean you can't take that jewel socket, so you just put a nice cobalt jewel in there.
Because the expensive version of the Aurabot, this is very similar to Snap's Aurabot. I'll link his channel in the description. Because you run Militant Faith, this gives you aura effect per 10 devotion in the radius, and then you run an unnatural instinct, which allocates all these, so you get the devotion from them. And because you're trying to scale aura effect, you take a lot of these nodes that you didn't in the previous version. This eats a lot of passive points on the tree. So there are very few things to drop if you want Ghost Shroud. Like you really need the second energy shield mastery, so you're immune to stun. Chaos res and energy shield. This helps cap. We've dropped the chaos res and curse resist wheel, just because we can make the chaos res up on gear pretty easily. And if you want curse resistance or reduced effect, you can pick up the armor energy shield mastery here. So is energy from within good? Yes, it is slightly better per passive point than just allocating energy shield on the tree through like this, but we're willing to take a slight reduction in energy shield in order to be able to keep having Ghost Dance because it's so broken. On the items, you obviously use Forbidden Flame and Flesh, so you can have Guardian. This gives you lots of Fizz reduction, it gives you Onslaught, and it means that the carry can run Enduring Composure, which is something I'll show you in a second. It generates endurance charges, so you both have endurance charges because of the party members sharing Power Frenzy and Endurance with each other. Most of the changes are pretty straightforward. We changed a little bit of how we're going to craft gear. We're going to try to get Flask, a Flask mod, so that we can comfortably drop survival instincts. Like you just get a Flask mod on your belt, and that should be enough to maintain 100% uptime. You can test, of course, getting Elixir here in PoE. You can see under the text it says effective flask stats. That's 100% uptime. So just make sure you have your uptime on Coruscating Elixir, and then we'll probably drop Chalice for Soul Ripper as well. All right, so those are the changes to the build. We'll go over our changes to the better trading folders. One thing I want to mention is the interrogation is very expensive. It gives you Secrets of Suffering, right? But there's also a alternating scepter, which this is a base that drops from Grand Heists. We don't know how available this will be on League Start, but it has Secrets of Suffering as the implicit. So if you can pick up one of these scepters, you can save a lot of money by not needing to use the interrogation. So what you do is you buy one of these scepters with Secrets of Suffering implicit, and then you use the +1 all physical spell skill gems recipe. And you can see if you vendor the scepter, you have to scour it, so it's a normal. Make sure you scour it first. Then you vendor it with any skill gems that have the physical tag that have a total of 40% quality. So it's just like the GCP recipe, except you have to make sure all the gems have the physical tag. Then you'll get a +1 physical spell gems weapon. And then, if you roll extra damage on it, great. If you don't, you can just try it again until you do, and then you just craft trap throwing speed. You also can buy like normal +1 phys spell scepters too, so you wands or scepters are pretty interchangeable. So as well as Gale Sight being an option, I just wanted to make note of that before I go through the trade filter here. I've loosely organized it by order of importance. Like you want to start with your Hrim's gloves, Hrim's Sorrow, Hrim's Burn doesn't matter, your Deerstalkers, and then these are basically the upgrades as you go down. If you're going to buy rings, I've made this sort of a template trade because you're going to want life and chaos resist. And so what you can do here is if you need a resist or you need a stat or you want there to be an empty suffix so that you can craft like a hybrid elemental and chaos res, you just check or uncheck these. That way you don't have to keep making a search every time you want to look for a different ring. The belt, you basically want life, chaos res, and strength. So I have one that searches that can find corrupted belts. And then there's one within that searches for open suffixes, so you can craft trap throwing speed because you want that on your belt. +2 tabula, it'll search for any of the 3 corruptions that give you +2 on seismic trap. The cluster jewels here, one of the optimizations we made was the Fizz clusters are probably going to be really expensive on League Start because there's so many people playing physical based seismic trapper. And so while buying a item level 50 to 67 physical large cluster and crafting on it, it'll basically be profit. What we'll do is if we end up hitting the force multiplier, we'll probably just sell it for profit and stick with the cold instead. So I have the bases for both physical and cold. What we'll probably end up running is I made this search. This is for an 8 passive large cluster, and it searches for any 3 notables that are good for us that have at least 20% damage on them, right? So 20% spell damage, 25% spell damage, 25%. Or actually, this one I put just because the hinder, it's decent. So these won't be as good of notables. You can remove some of the ones for Sap Psyche to, I think, Arcane Heroism. These are all the ones from the spells, the spell damage large clusters, and they're going to be slightly worse. But this will let you search for any triple notable large cluster jewel that is good for you. So it should be a lot more cost efficient. For the trap damage, medium clusters, you want item level 50 to 67, but you can go up to 83. This isn't like crafting the Fizz one where it becomes 5 times harder to craft if you go over 67. It just becomes twice as hard to craft. You'll need maybe 20 fossils instead of 10 or something to craft Guerrilla Tactics with Set and Forget. I also made this search, which searches for, Guerrilla Tactics is slightly better, but you can also do Surprise Sabotage. And because Surprise Sabotage is an elemental damage notable, it'll be a lot cheaper on League Start. So if you don't plan on crafting it yourself, you can just search this, and these cluster jewels will be just fine. Finally, this is the jewel search. I've grouped it into 3 categories: life, crit multi, and generic damage. You can obviously add a stat group here if you want to search for something with an attribute you need or a resist. But basically, this will search for max life +1 crit multi +1 damage mod. You can just change these numbers if you want to search for 2 damage mods and no crit multi. It'd be a little bit cheaper on League Start. You can configure this however you like. It's just designed to make it faster for you to buy jewels. And then obviously we either want Gale Sight, we want the Interrogation or Secrets of Suffering because we need to be applying brittle. This searches for the Helm enchant on any base, which this should be significantly cheaper if you're not going a dex base, but it means you can't roll spell suppression on it. So you'll have to make up for that elsewhere. And then this searches for the Helm enchant with a dexterity base. And then this will search for Elemental Pin Enchanted Deerstalker boots, which are really good and shouldn't be that expensive on League Start. This is unnecessary though. Just a little thing to be watching for. And then at level 21 Seismic Trap. And that's basically all of the searches on the Sabo. And then for the Aurabot, it's grouped into 2 sections. Seek, if you want to go over the budget setup.
All right, so the budget setup is essentially completing the first version of the build. The expensive Aurabot you do not touch until you have basically everything set up on the budget Aurabot. So at the start, we have the small reservation cluster 3 passive. By default, I believe this is set to search for an eye level 78 or above. Eye level 78 is important for crafting tier, I believe, 2 energy shield on your cluster jewel. With these 3 passive clusters, it's important to remember that we actually don't care about like increased effect on it, as some Aurabot builds do. So if you roll it while you're rolling with alts and augments to get energy shield, you can probably take it. It'll make it a little bit easier to finagle your mana values later on.
So you might be able to
But the
sell it
main
too.
important thing with this is to get tier 3 or tier 2 energy shield and like a something good on the suffix, whether it's like 5 int, 4 all attributes on the suffix. Um, Depending on the price of these jewels at the start, um, obviously eye level 78 doesn't drop until yellow maps or so. So if these are inexpensive, like less than 10 chaos or 15 chaos, right when we get to maps, we're going to buy an eye level, 60 or whatever, 3 passive reservation cluster, simply to get the reservations so that I can get all of my auras on. And we're not going to be crafting on those. They're simply just going to make the build work, get all the auras, and then once you can get an eye level 78 one, that's when you buy that, start rolling with augments. The Cobalt Jewel, unlike the Saboteur, there are very few things we care about on our jewels. This is you simply want maximum energy shield, and then one of any of the other notables. This is set to 2 of the other ones by default, a little bit nicer. You can change it to count 1. Yeah, max ES and one other good thing on the Cobalt
Yeah.
Jewel. That's all I care
Intelligence
about.
intelligence actually gives you a lot of energy shield. So
Yeah. And the thing about these jewels, they're going to be dirt cheap to need only 2 mods on a jewel. It will be very easy to find, yeah, max ES and int, which is why I set it to 2 so that you hopefully can get an additional good suffix.
all right.
All right. For the helmet, it saves a good bit of money to get um, an Eater of Worlds implicit. A lot of the Eater of Worlds nodes on the Atlas passive tree allow items to drop with Eater of Worlds implicits on them, and we're just going to pick up any of the helmets that have mana reservation efficiency on it. Um, this is the one that you craft with woe essences to get your spell suppress on. It would be This is for an evasion helm. You can always check for an evasion/energy shield helm to get a little bit more ES. Just remember that that's going to add, it's going to make crafting the spell suppression more difficult. So it's going to be a little bit more expensive.
And the reason we
Um,
go for the mana reservation implicit instead of using an essence of loathing is because crafting with a loathing essence and trying to hit spell suppression, which is a suffix, it's just going to cost too much. It's just cost prohibitive. So this is a much cheaper way to do the same thing.
that's right. So then we have a lot of, okay, well, we have the gloves. This is another base that we're crafting on. This is evasion energy shield gloves, with the important thing being the chance to suppress spell damage implicit. Again, Eater of Worlds modifier. And just as with the helmet, if this is too expensive, remember it's going to be probably more expensive to buy and also increase the amount of essences required. You can go to the filter up there and knock off the evasion or the energy shield on it, and then you'll be just searching for a pure evasion base. Those will be a lot easier to find and cheaper to craft.
All right, and then
Um,
the flasks.
then yeah, we have these flasks. So the thing about these flasks, um, well, if you pull up the modifiers that I put on, your flask, you're going to want the suffixes on 3 of your flasks. In some combination, you're going to want increased armor, evasion, and corrupted blood and bleeding immunity. So this is the filter that I put for all 3 flasks.
Yeah, you want
And
these on.
then,
I was gonna say you want these on the Saboteur too. I was just too lazy to make it.
yeah. And the thing about these, I've also put duration and reduce flask charges used on there, because the way that I intended to use this flask filter is sort of as a plan B, where I'm probably just going to buy a flask base. Anything higher than level 68 is good, because you can roll the second highest tier of increased armor and evasion. and you can roll the second highest tier of duration. And the reason that I made this filter for the flasks is simply that a lot of people, a flask drops, people identify it, and these may exist. This is a little bit higher. This is a little bit of a better item than what I would be crafting with alts and augments. And the idea with this is just to have a live search running. If someone puts one of these up for sale, great, I buy it. I save time crafting, save money. But probably I'm just going to buy 3 eye level 68 bases and craft them myself with around 150 to 200 alterations each.
All right, and then for the ring, and I'll probably let you do that for me too.
I
Because
mean,
you are
hey,
the
the
flask
filters are there.
expert.
I'm not only am I the Aurabot, I'm the alt spamming bot.
All right, what do we got for a ring here?
All right, so rings, filters are a little bit more complicated, but the idea is the same. The rings, once again, this is a little bit nicer than what we would be crafting, and this is going to be another live search item that I have up. What we're looking for here is I have 3 filters, one for any ring that if it's a so the ideal base for a ring is an amethyst ring. So if you click on good amethyst ring in the bottom right, you're going to see that it has a little bit more lenient filters on the modifiers. These are all things you can change around. Essentially, we're checking for maximum energy shield. We want that. We want int, and then hopefully an empty suffix. The double modifiers there allows you to search for if they have already crafted something on it. Um,
Oh, one thing to
but
add.
you
Okay, sorry.
you can use something like a moonstone ring or even you know a, a resist implicit ring. However, you're going to need like a higher tier of chaos res on these. I put them, these probably aren't going to exist, but I put them on the filter regardless. Again, it costs nothing to have a live search up for these. If you see one, buy it, craft chaos res on it.
It's important to
But
note.
again, like, oh yeah,
I was going to say all these prices are super skewed. So if you're looking at the cost of the things we're searching for and saying it's crazy, it's because we're the league's over and it's searching in standard and nobody sells 1C items in standard. So it's going to skew really expensive. Like you'll have a whole list of these probably with on league start in the economy.
yep.
Didn't mean to interrupt your
Um,
thought there.
all good. I was just finishing up again with the rings. I just want to reiterate that uh, this is just a live search thing, and what we're probably going to do is just buy a decently high eye level amethyst ring, 78 or whatever. There aren't any important item level breakpoints for the rings, at least not influenced ones. So you're just going to buy the highest eye level amethyst you can afford, spam Essence of Woe on it until you get like an int suffix, or until you get intelligence as a suffix, and an open suffix, and you just craft chaos res. But hey, if one of these rings pops up, I'll gladly buy it.
Yep, save time too. And
Yeah,
then
and then
baited.
you have Beta Breath. So
It's just a dirt cheap
this,
1C item on league start.
yeah, this is what you're gonna use once you get to like level 50 or something. Um, Pretty much whenever you swap to Covenant. I mean, yeah, this thing is truly dirt cheap, like 1 elk unique. I have it set to have slightly better rolls, so you might be paying an entire Chaos Orb for it. But it's still a good purchase. And what I have not included in the budget Aurabot, the last item, is this Beta Breath will be replaced by a crystal belt whenever you can find one. Um, but like there aren't any filters. We're not buying a crystal belt with mods. It's just the moment you see a crystal belt, that 80 energy shield implicit is already pretty much better than a beta breath. You can craft it with int essences if you want to hit like energy shield prefix and then maybe craft chaos res. But you just buy any crystal belt the moment you can.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy to craft a decent one. And the other thing about buying a base is you catalyst defense quality on it before you craft, so it only costs 4, and that's like a chaos or 2. Maybe 4 chaos if you're
Yeah, it's
feeling
probably a little
spicy.
bit more.
Say, I always thought defense catalysts are pretty cheap on league start.
They're like the third most expensive typically. Um, I mean, the annoying thing is that you you have to. No one has more than 2,
You have to buy them
so
2 at a
you
time.
spend time. You have to buy them one by one,
For
which is
the
why it's yeah, very important to quality it while it's still a white item.
expensive Aurabot,
All right. The expensive Aurabot. Yeah, this is gonna include a lot more unique items because we can start looking at corruptions. Obviously, you use Covenant very early on in the original version. What this is searching for here is a +2 covenant, and I have right below it, remember socketed AoE or socketed aura gives +2 to your auras, and then if you go back to the covenant one,
Oh, sorry.
um, right below the +2 filter, I have another one that's not enabled by default, but you can check that one instead. And this is going to be a +1 covenant that also has a good roll on the energy shield, which should be about as good as a +2.
And I think you can use, because with +2, you don't, I believe you don't need level 21 purities. With the +2, you can have level 20 purities. Let's see here. Body armor. So this is with level 20 purities, you still have 87. But if you, so if you're using a +1, you have to have level 21 purities, but you'll still hit the breakpoint to have the higher elemental res. The resolute technique ephemeral, that's actually really smart. Although
Yeah,
I think
this is
the
something that is they're probably going to pop up.
I think
This
the
is not important at all with just running a level 1 precision. You have about 80% chance to hit, but wait, did I not have the mod on there?
yeah, I'll fix it.
Oh, okay. Um, and the other thing about this, I would include not only resolute technique, but like 46 or more increased energy shield. Because even if it has resolute technique, I don't want to be picking up a low rolled one of these. Because with no investment with a level 1 precision, you still have like 82% chance to hit with your smite. But you know, if one of these pops up, it'll be nice to never miss a smite. You don't want to have to press that button more than you have to.
Yeah, that's actually big brain. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, +2 sin trek. This isn't necessary because the purities. Well, I guess the purities could go in this.
You'd have to
But
shuffle your reservation around. It's pretty
yeah,
tight
it
because it's reserving off your life. But this is still a DPS increase for your like damage auras. You know, it's worth watching for.
yep is just good. These will probably be a little bit under 1 exalt. They might be hard to find. No one's corrupting that many sing treks. Okay, and then below that we have this is going to be very important, the aura effect evasion helm. This is a synthesis implicit. Here we're searching for the highest tier. That's the only one we care about. Evasion base is important for, you know, again, crafting spell suppression and for the mastery on the tree that gives you spell suppression if all of your armor items are evasion, aside from your chest plate.
So I don't think we actually take that on the expensive Aurabot. So
Do
you
we
could,
not?
yeah, we could actually.
No, we
It's
just
mostly just a
rely
spell
on having higher
suppression.
tier spell suppress on the items.
Yeah, you get to
Right.
ungear, and you also have the all these small nodes because you're picking them up for the militant faith. But yeah, you do want a dex base, so you can
Okay.
craft spell suppression though.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the. Let's see. Then the militant faith, which is the cluster or the legion jewel.
Yeah, this is by far the most important aspect of the expensive Aurabot, along with the helm. This is what gives you a massive amount more aura effect. This is going to allow you to hit extra break points on your purities. It's going to buff up your hatred. The important mod here is the increased effect of non-curse auras per 10 devotion. But additionally, you can try searching for one that has that as well as defenses from equipped shield. That is the only other one of these devotion modifiers that could be useful. It'll give you like couple hundred more ES if you have that modifier on it. But it's very easy to skip out on that. Just make sure you get increased aura effect.
And then Soul Ripper, which is good for Vol Discipline and Vol Grace. Which
Yeah, Vault Discipline, because it's impossible to die in one hit in these builds. In our testing with the Feared, we noticed that really the biggest danger with the Aurabot was running over degen puddles. Not that it would kill you, just that it would prevent your your energy shield from recharging all the way up to full. We do have a lot of regeneration, but still the recharge is useful. And pressing Vault Discipline pretty much makes you immortal for the entire duration of it. In addition, on the final version, we probably get more Flask mods on the belt, and that allows you to drop divine or overflowing chalice, right? So we just put Soul Ripper in its place. Vial of the Ghost is what you use to upgrade Soul Ripper. So that's why those are both there.
This belt probably won't exist, but it never hurts to look.
Yep.
And then the eye level 82 Crusader, which again may or may not exist. You can always slam the belt with a Crusader, like just buy a base and then slam it with a Crusader orb, Exalted orb,
Yeah.
to make it.
It's actually a little bit cheaper on average to craft it first and then slam it. And if you fail to slam, you just recraft it for another like 30-40 chaos.
And what you're trying to hit, and this is true on the rings too. It's a jewelry. You're trying to hit the increased energy shield Crusader implicit. So you can either work on a Crusader base and then try to craft this, or you can try to just slam it with an Exalted Orb on a good Crystal Belt if you're feeling lucky. I think that about goes over our folders. I don't have an expensive Sabo version because not a lot changes. It's a couple uniques. And I basically fell asleep after finishing this much, so it's plenty good enough. There's not as many specific things like there is for the Aurabot. The other thing we're going to go over is our Atlas skill trees. What we're doing is, since we're a two-man party, I'm going to be running the early maps, and I'm going to be running them on this Atlas tree, and then Seek is going to be setting his Atlas up this way so that we can just swap over and be running Crusader maps. So early on...
Conqueror maps.
Conqueror maps, sorry. Yeah. Did I say Crusader? It's a
hey,
Conqueror. It's
the only influence we care about otherwise.
My brain is mush and everything is blurry. So starting Atlas tree, we've decided to go with Blight. Now, a little bit of PTSD from Blight, because last time we tried to do Blight when it had all the nodes in Lyra Arthane, we took all of the Blight nodes and then we bought like 20 Blight Scarabs, and we didn't drop a single Blighted map. Not one. Not a single one with all of the nodes. It was so sad. But we're going to try Blight again this league. I think it'll probably be the best. We're going to go take Blight here. Obviously take all the increased map drop ones. Takes Kirak missions just to fill out the Atlas faster. This Keystone is amazing. It's just probably worth rushing to on league start, depending on, like, once you get your map drops at least. And then we're taking Delirium nodes and more Blight nodes. So basically, we're just going to be farming Blight and Delirium on league start, and as soon as we get like 70, 80 Atlas completions and Conqueror maps exist, or Shaper or Elder Guardians, because those are an option. We're planning on doing Conqueror maps, but they might be too expensive, or we'll see. Basically, this is the early push Atlas, get passive points, try to make some currency tree, and then the second one here, this is going to be for running Conqueror maps. We're going to try to farm Cirrus early on before we swap to Feared, because Cirrus is just huge money. If you want to go over this Atlas tree and how we do things. Oh, let me first go. We block a bunch of things because we just want Blight, and we want Blight and Delirium as much as possible. So Expedition, Harvest, Legion, Ritual, Metamorph, and Heist. These are all great, but for what we plan on doing, we think it'll be more optimal for us not to run them. You can obviously change this or use a completely different strategy. You know, there's no reason you have to do the same strategy we do. Things like Essence nodes are amazing. This is just what we plan on doing, and I'll link these in the description too.
Yeah. One nice thing about these nodes and the changes that occurred in 3.18, previously the chance naturally to spawn a Delirium mirror in maps was absurdly low, but given the Stream of Consciousness, the big keystone in the middle, given all of the blocking nodes that we take on both versions of the tree, you're going to be encountering a Delirium mirror around 1 in every 5 maps on the later tree and 1 in every 3 to 4 maps on the initial tree, which is nice because who doesn't love Delirium? It's the best league mechanic.
It really is.
The other thing, so if you go over to the later tree, oh, and also the one change we've made is that we have not blocked Heist on the higher tier maps. This is because the time investment on Heist, you click a thing, you pick it up, it's about 2 seconds. And once you get to, tier 14, 15, 16 maps, you're going to be dropping high level blueprints and contracts, and those are big money and definitely worth it, far more than the lower level heists.
Yeah, so...
Okay, so the two things that we focus on with this tree are Abyss and Strongboxes. The main, well, I mean, the main reason for these is that we're pathing up to the right side of the tree for Conqueror maps anyways, and this is the best thing you can get from the right side of the tree. We've also taken that keystone down there. I think that's the rares have an additional modifier. That's going to be making in 3.18 every rare drop a lot more loot, maybe about 20 to 30% more, presumably. It's definitely worth 2 passive points, especially given that Abyss spawns a ton of rare monsters, a lot more than most mechanics, so we'll be getting extra benefit from that. Yeah, we just take those two bottom strongbox nodes, take operative strongboxes in the middle, that's the really good one. The Scarabs one that everybody loves from last league. Strongboxes, very nice for maps. They just, again, you click it, you make currency. And the main thing that this strategy revolves around is getting a lot of pack size and just generic quant. Once again, we take Stream of Consciousness in the middle, and we take the Fortune Favors the Brave node down there. We're going to be running Fortune Favors on all of our maps. Ideally, we unlock Harvest and Delirium before doing Fortune Favors the Brave, so that we get extra value out of it. It probably
I think Fortune Favors the
won't
Brave.
Be possible.
It can hit things you don't have unlocked, though. I'm almost positive.
Wait, are you sure about that?
Yeah, it's like a random option, including ones you haven't unlocked yet. I'm pretty sure.
Oh. Okay, that's probably the case. I'm definitely not 100% sure.
Either way, you take this and you run Fortune.
Anyways, it's so good for the quant.
Yeah.
And the thing to remember is that pack size 1 is really good, but we get extra value out of it because of the, I think, hidden kingdoms, underground kingdoms, Abyss notable in the bottom right. Below that, this thing is super important. If you're going to be having, say, you get 20% pack size from a map, you get 10 to 15% from that Atlas notable. And that means that this node alone is going to be giving you 15% chance to encounter an Abyss in every map. We're going to be seeing, with all of these nodes, an Abyss around 1 in every 3 maps.
Probably more.
Slightly more common than that, just by doing Fortune Favors the Brave, no Abyss Sextants or anything.
And the other thing is, the Stygian Vices, the +3, are really valuable, and you get a lot of experience from Abyss. That's one thing it's really good for, especially with this node. So we just want to be leveling up as quick as possible.
Yep. Yeah, that +3 node is going to be crazy. You just get into like a tier 14 map, all of a sudden you can drop an eye level 86 Stygian Vice.
And those are like 10
and the magic and rare
easily.
Monsters. Abyss is just big XP.
Yeah.
Throughout both these trees, we've decided to prioritize getting XP a little bit more than we normally do, because it's just so fast to progress through the Atlas these days that you don't need to be worrying about farming currency in lower tiers.
Yeah, just because of how easy it is to go up the tiers.
Yeah, so then we just,
the
in the
boss
top,
nodes.
we're going to be farming Conqueror maps. We're also going to be doing Maven invitations when we can, which is why we take Hide of Hubris. This node is pretty broken.
It's pure upside.
Well,
there are no cases where you don't take Hide of Hubris. If you are ever running an invitation, I don't care if you're on the dinkiest build that you're like, I don't even know if I can do this, you still take Hide of Hubris, because you just alt spam and then AUG until you get 2 mods that are irrelevant for your builds, and then that's just bonus quantity. It doesn't actually make the fight harder, because the mods don't do anything, right? So 100% increased effect of 0 is still going to be 0. So even if you're on a budget, you still do this. If you're not on a budget, you can roll like 60% quantity invitations pretty easily by like alt-aug regaling. If you're like really scared of mods, you just hit 3 that aren't scary to you, that don't affect your build, and then that becomes like, you now have like, you're doing like 120% quant invitation, and it's not any meaningfully harder than just running a 0 quant invitation. So you always take this. This node is insane. And then Captivated Interest. It makes them, you get more quantity, more Crescent Splinters. It makes them release all at once. We're basically, even on the budget versions, we're more than strong enough to do every single Maven invitation with this node, except the Feared. We will be strong enough to do this with the Feared, but you might have to put a little bit more investment into it. So, if you're doing the Feared, unspec this if you're not sure you can handle it. Otherwise, you should be able to handle Captivated Interest on. For like Elder Slayers, you just drop all your traps in the middle and everything dies. And then the Maven nodes, Uber Cirrus, if you can run it, We don't know if we will be able to yet. Depends on how strong it is, but obviously take this if you can. And then once we do switch over to farming feared, we're going to pick up, obviously all the shaper nodes, all the synthesis nodes, and you just drop like all the abyss stuff. You drop the strongbox and you just transition into full in-game boss farming. But this is more of an intermediate stage where it's like, okay, we can buy Conqueror maps, we can start running them, selling the influence spaces. There's more like a stage 2. So this is like stage 1 Atlas, stage 2 Atlas, and then stage 3, you just drop all the fluff, pick up every single bossing node in the tree, and then that's it. It's pretty about that simple. I think that's about everything. We've got the updated POBs, we've got the Atlas skill trees, we've gone over the updates for crafting, some of the small things. Is there anything else you think we should add?
I think that about covers it. It's I'm sure this is already getting a little bit too long, so
Yeah, it's gone on longer than I intended.
we can't say we didn't cover everything.
That's true. Moderate effort content. We're not going to script it to make it super short, but we're also not going to leave things out. That's our motto. So
that's right. Put the burden on the viewer.
It'll all be timestamped anyway. So, anyways, thank you for watching. If you want to see us kill a 250% quant feared on day 2 in like 30 seconds, we can probably do that. And subscribe, and you'll see some fun highlights as well as updates coming out in the future. And honestly, we'll probably start doing this more often, like more duo content, just because it's so fun to do, and making content itself is fun. So, anyways, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Best of luck on League Start. May Chris Wilson be with you, and drop Mage Bloods all.